I was also an atheist. When people shared gospel with me, I was the one who were against. I didn't like them. I was only living by lying, cheating, stealing. I knew too much about the dark side of this country. This is some misunderstanding that people might have towards Japan, the mission field, because this has been 1%. People from overseas might think Japan, the people in Japan love to follow Buddhism and Shintoism, but actually they don't know what they believe in. They follow nothing. From our experience, people not against God, people not against Jesus in Japan, but they are. I remember one time I was in the prayer house in America, and God was even saying that He's gonna flip this nation. Hi guys, my name is Masa. I'm a pastor at the Awakening Tokyo here with my wife Esther. And then we came here 4.5 years ago. And I myself currently is 28 years old. I'm a Japanese, born and raised in Tokyo. And then I became Christian 8 years ago. Before that, actually I was an atheist. I didn't believe any God. I was actually doing the criminal business. I was a fraud. I was stealing money and then just spending money just for empty things. I was playing in the Shinjuku, Kabukicho until the morning, just wasting all the monies that I steal from the people. So that's how I was living. My life was so empty and broken. But when I was 20, I encountered God. That was the first time. The love of God was overwhelming, just filling my heart. I couldn't really hold inside of my heart. I was just overflowing as a tears. I was weeping on the floor. I was so confused what was happening to me. And first time in my life, I heard the voice of God. He told me, "My son, I love you. I want to use your life for the harvest in Asia." So that was 8 years ago. And then right after that, I was not a simple person. I stood up. I was confused. I thought I was a wrong person. That was just random voice I heard in my head. So I straightly went back to what I used to do, the criminal business. And then somehow God restored my conscience. Whenever I steal, I lie, my heart started to feel painful, which I never felt before. And every time I lie, I steal, I was tearing. And I didn't understand why I'm crying. And every time I remember those moments, I was feeling this presence of God that I experienced. That moment when I was hit by the love of God, I was weeping on the floor. I was on the floor for around 30 minutes. I was really met by the love of God. And that really changed my life. So my mom was the first believer in my family. My mom became Christian around the time when my parents divorced. My mom was brokenhearted. And then I thought it's good for my mom to go to church and believe in some kind of religions, because the religions are not bad. This is what I was believing, but this has nothing to do with me. She sometimes insisted me to go to church together with her. I went. I was just totally not interested in anything at all. I don't feel anything. I don't see anything. I just feel so bored the entire time of the church service. I was like, I will never come again. I feel like that's wasting of time and the money. But here and there, sometimes, few times I went to the church with my mom just because she was really, really persistently insisting me. And this was one of the time I went to church with her. And then there was an American missionary came up to me and she wanted to pray for me. I was not expecting anything, because my mom was always praying for me. I was like, feel free to pray for me. As long as you don't charge me anything, you can pray for me. And then when she prayed for me, the moment I was filled, my heart was filled by this love of God. The love I cannot explain, the love I never experienced from people. And that was so overwhelming. I was weeping and weeping and weeping. I couldn't even stand. I was on the floor and shaking for 30 minutes. And that's the moment I heard the voice of God. And then after that, those seasons, I was still walking away from the Lord. There's 5 different strangers in all random situations or random timing. They find me randomly. And they talk to me. I don't know you, and you don't know me, but I felt like God told me to talk to you about something. I felt like God wants to use your life as one of the leaders for the great harvest in Asia. After 5 times, I already knew what God is doing, and God was just really chasing after me, and I understood I had nowhere else I can run. Even if I'm at home in my room, God can still chase after me. Wherever I go, He knows where I'm going, and He's going after me. I was so filled by this fear of the Lord. I still remember this moment. I was filled with the awe. The moment the fifth person came to me, I was, okay, God, this is enough. I understand that you are God, you are alive, and you want to use my life. This moment, I surrendered my life. This was when I was 20 years old. This happened in Tokyo. This didn't happen through people or anything, but this is really God himself really chasing after me. He is alive. I really believe that God is really preparing for the great harvest in Tokyo, in Asia, and beyond. So this is how I got saved.
When did you decide to become a pastor and start a church?
After the fifth person came to spoke to me, I was already knowing that God wanted to use my life, and I couldn't run away. I surrendered everything. So because I was involved in the criminal business, I had to totally disappear from this world, from this community. I couldn't just tell them I want to quit because I became Christian. I thought they're gonna still just kind of pursue me and just try to squeeze me out in some ways, take advantage of me. So I didn't want that. So I felt I just wanted to just disappear. That was one of the really hard times in my life, that I was really needing God to come in to help me. I just decided just to change my phone number, delete all my social medias, everything, and I stay in my room. I just disappeared from those people, and I stay in my room and I just cry out to God. God, I don't know now what to do. So I thought I'm gonna keep going to this direction, doing my fraud business. But now I stopped everything. I don't have any degrees in my life. In Japan, usually, if you don't have any degrees or if you're not properly working in the companies, doing some normal jobs, that's quite risky for your future. I didn't have any of those. I was only living by lying, cheating, stealing. So I didn't know what to do for the rest of my life. But only thing I knew, God wanted me to quit and to surrender my life to Him. I didn't know how. I stayed in my room, fasting and praying. I was seeking out to the Lord. I was just reading the Bible cover to cover, trying to understand who this God is, what He wants me to do. And then I remember this one day, I was praying. I heard this audible voice from God telling me, prepare yourself for the great harvest. In my spirit, I knew, okay, I felt like God is wanting me to go to some training. Probably maybe it's a Bible college or something. I opened my laptop, searched Bible school in Japan, in overseas. There's like thousands and 10,000s, so many options. As you know, my background, I was not growing up in the church, or I was not discipled by churches, but I met God outside of the church. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know what's the differences of all these denominations and the Bible colleges. So I closed my computer. I told God, I don't know what to do. If you're the one wanting me to go, then you gotta make the way. You gotta make it very clear where you want me to go. So I gave up. And then one day, very after this prayer, my mother, she became Christian a little bit before I became Christian, actually. And she was always praying for me, by the way. But I was really against her. I was really against her faith. I didn't believe anything. But now she was very happy that I became Christian. And then she went to the bookstore and she found one book that she thought I might like. And that book is called When Heaven Invades the Earth. And this book is written by the pastor, the senior pastor of the ministry school that I've been to in California. His name is Bill Johnson. When I was reading the book, I felt like everything that I experienced just started to make sense. I felt like, wow, this is the God that I want to know. This is the God I experienced. This is the God I read in the Bible. And this is the God I want to know more deeper. And then I found out they have a school in California. So I just prayed to God. So if this is God, then just make the way for me. But practically it was really, really sounding very impossible for me to go there because I didn't have finances. Or I rarely speak English at the time. And then they also required me for some pastoral references and some Christians references. They have to know me at least for 2 years. And I was like, I just got saved. I don't know anyone. I don't even know a pastor. I don't know what to do. But if this is God, He's going to make a way. So I tried. I explained everything on the paper. I tried on an interview. They even told me my English is so bad, probably I wouldn't make up for the school. The interviewers told me that probably it's going to be hard for me to keep up with the school. So I thought maybe if this is God is really telling me to go, probably God's going to make a way. Originally they told me they're going to give me the answer within 2 weeks. They didn't give me any answers for 2 weeks. 1 month, and 1.5 months, no response. Nearly around 2 months, then finally I got the acceptance letter. So I now decided, okay, so now it's everything confirmed that I can go to the school and I get to do the training. That was in the 2016, just without anything, without knowing anything. For the first time in my life, without even speaking any English, I just went over to California and I got the training. And during the time I was in California for 2 years, during those 2 years, I learned a lot from God Himself. Of course, the environment was amazing. I've learned a lot from these amazing leaders and pastors from all over the world, actually. But more than anything, God Himself was really training me, teaching me what it means to be the Son of God. How does it look like to live by faith and then to follow His voice? And how God will really back me up. How God will really fulfill His promises as I will take a risk and obey His voice.
Was it that place you decided to become a pastor, or you decided before going to America to be a pastor?
I mean, actually, I didn't think that I'm going to be a pastor. I didn't know what actually it meant when God asked me to follow Him and surrender my life and be a leader for the Great Harvest. Maybe the most typical thing that I could imagine was being a pastor. I knew some people are also ministering as an evangelist, but I didn't really know what God wanted me to do. But anyway, I had a really strong heart with the people who don't know God. Yeah, just because I was one of them. I was also an atheist. When people shared the gospel with me, I was the one who were against. I didn't like them. I was mocking them. I was one of them. Now my eyes are open. Now I can see. I want them to know God. So my heart was really burning for the souls. So since after I was saved, I was really passionate to go to the street and pray for people. I've learned about that even from the YouTube. I saw the people, evangelists, is preaching the gospel on the street and they're praying for the sickness, healing the sick on the street. And I felt like this is something I'm supposed to do. I want people to know God, so this was what I was burning for.
When you left California, you said that you never wanted to come back to Japan. It was the last place you wanted to come back. So tell us about that transition from not really wanting to come back here, but you decided to come back and to minister to your people.
Where to start? First of all, I really didn't want to come back to Japan. The reason is I knew too much about the dark side of this country, or especially Tokyo. I was flawed. I see all this the dark side of the society, and I saw all this greediness, all this twisted mindset that people have in the city. So that was the first reason. But another reason also, I was part of them. I was so terrified and afraid that they're gonna find me out. They're gonna find me because of how I quit my fraud business. I just disappeared from them. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to see them again. I didn't want to meet them again after being a Christian. At the time, I was just really wanted to separate myself from them. I didn't want them to just find me again or chase after me. Nothing. I just didn't want to get into trouble with them. That's why I didn't. Yeah.
So how did you decide to overcome that fear? Like, what was it God that spoke to you? Like, what made you overcome that and decide to come back despite all your concerns?
During my time in America, God was really speaking to me just a lot about what He's planning for Japan. I remember one time I was in the prayer house in America, and God was even telling me that He's going to flip this nation. Christianity in Japan has been 1%, but He wants to flip this nation from 1% into 99%. I believe it could go 100, of course, but I think this is just God is just using this as a metaphor that He can flip this nation easily. God can flip the nation that is most unreached nation into the nation who send a lot of leaders to the world and missionaries to the world. And I didn't understand in the beginning. I was just writing everything in my journal. I really remember that here and there, God has been really giving me the seed of the hope for Japan in me to prepare myself to come back here. Anyway, long story short, after I graduated school, I met my wife. She's also an alumni from the same school. Also, interestingly, she has the same heart and the vision for the Asia. God was speaking to her. She has also a radical story, and she has this calling from God for the great harvest in Asia. But none of us thought we're going to go to Japan. We were both really excited about what God's going to do in Asia, but we didn't know we're going to come back to Japan. She's not even Japanese. She's actually Chinese, which is also very special. When we were in America, we love to go to the street together to reach out for those Asian people in the city. After the graduation, we also did some travel around Asia, doing some mission trips and serve in the churches. evangelize on the street. So that's what we are doing. But our relationship grew, long story short, from the friendship. And then we got married. And then we were just preparing for the next step. But that time, I had a commitment with Europe. There's a ministry called Awakening Europe that's based in Germany. And then what they're doing is exactly similar to what God has been speaking to me about Asia. So I was very excited when I know about them. I was feeling like this is a place I'm supposed to go and learn from them. So I was already having a commitment with this ministry, to serve under this ministry. And then right before this, without any plan, surprisingly, we end up getting married. I didn't know I'm going to get married when I was graduating. It was a very short process and a quick process. And God was really helping us a lot to process this very fast. And then we got married right before I was traveling to Europe. Now we went to Europe all as a couple together. And as we arrived in Europe, it was very clear that God was already starting to speak to us about Japan, Tokyo. He was giving a lot of signs, and even the leaders around the ministry was also receiving the word from God. It was very obvious and clear that they were feeling like we're supposed to go back to Japan to start a church. And then God spoke to us. Japan's gonna be the break point for the great harvest in Asia. And everything makes sense now. So we thought, okay, this is obviously God. And we don't know what to do now. And we don't know where to start. We don't know anyone there. I left country when I became Christian. I don't have any connections. I only know my mother. But we just knew this is God. So we just traveled back with a suitcase, without knowing anything, without any finance, nothing. Just with a suitcase, just two of us, fly back. Then, surprisingly, there are some people heard about us coming back to Tokyo, and then they came together and we started a fellowship. This is the beginning of the Awakening Tokyo. And this was 2019.
What have you guys been doing so far since you started back in 2019?
The time we came in was right before the COVID pandemic. As we came into the country, the border was closed. Thankfully, the pandemic, the restriction here, the quarantine restriction here is not as strict as some countries overseas. We could still do some small gatherings, and our church was just starting, so it was just good size. We've learned a lot in this first 3 years of the pandemic season. We have seen many salvations and baptisms, because this is part of our DNA as Awakening Tokyo, is to reach out for the souls. The reason we're here is not to just build a local church. We're here to start a movement. We're here to be a catalyst. We're here to demonstrate what's possible in Japan and to encourage the body of Christ in Asia and in Japan. During the pandemic, we started every week gathering, and we started to raise the disciples, and that's the season actually where we are staying in a share house with some of the disciples that we're discipling at that time. And then by the grace of God, after the COVID finished, our church just started to expand bigger and bigger and bigger, and then now we even have this building with 2 floors. Now we're still renting, but this year we're still even praying about purchasing a land and a building. We believe that God is really timely speaking the even bigger expansion in Tokyo. And we're also planning for the church plant in the different cities. As Awakening Asia, Awakening Tokyo, we have this vision of planting the churches in all the big cities in Asia.
What do you think is the greatest hindrance to Japan receiving the gospel?
Well, what I believe, this is something I haven't shared yet in this video. It's one of the calling that God has given us, is to reestablish the foundation of the churches. And one of my strongest passion is to see the foundation of the gospel being restored in the churches. And then we're going to the street, and sometime when some Christians heard about us and then see us on Instagram and come to our church, they imagine sometime that we are the church that's just loves to do the evangelistic church. I personally think this is not the main point. Going to the outreach is not the main point. What I really think is that the real Christians wants to please the Father. And if we want to please the Father, we will reach out for the souls. We want to do the will of God. We don't want to live for ourselves, but we want to live for the will of the Father. And this is the way of the Christians living. But nowadays, the churches I personally experience and feel that nowadays the churches are confused with all the human traditions and all the voices of the flesh. And they're talking about the gospel, but now I personally feel like God wants to reveal once again the true meaning of the gospel, that the foundation, the pure foundation of the gospel will be restored. The Christians will come together as a unity, the churches will come together as a unity on the same ground of the foundation of the gospel. And together we'll run for the one mission of the gospel, the Great Commission. Then we will see very soon, not just in Japan, but all over the world will be saved.
But in Japan, right? Like a Japanese person, for instance, when someone comes to them with the gospel, like what's the thing that stops them from receiving the word about Jesus? Is it culture? Is it tradition? What is it?
Well, from my experience, we see a lot of salvations through our church. We see people easily getting saved. People are very open towards God and Jesus. This is some misunderstanding that people might have towards Japan, the mission field, because this has been 1%. People from overseas might think the people in Japan love to follow Buddhism and Shintoism, but actually they don't know what they believe in. They follow nothing. They just want it to be normal. They don't want to be weird people. This is what I mean. From our experience, people not against God, people not against Jesus in Japan, but they are afraid of people. So when you come up to talk to them about God, they're open about God, but they are not open to you, if that makes sense. They don't know who you are. They can't trust you as a human. Because nowadays in Japan, or especially in Tokyo, I myself grew up in Tokyo, there's so much people taking advantage of you. So everybody have to protect yourself from other people trying to harm you. So this is how we develop this self-protection skill. This is what I understand.
Where can people find you if someone wants to get in touch?
So we run the social media at Awakening Asia. So this is our church account. If you're interested in the move of God in Japan, or in Asia, this is the account for you to follow. And then also I have a personal account, the masa.morishita. If you want to ask me any further questions or stories, you can direct message me. We have a website as well, www.awakeningasia.org. You can learn more about our church and ministry. We also run a ministry school here. If you feel like you're called to Asia, this is the school that's perfect for you. We will build the foundation, the strong foundation for the future leaders in Asia and beyond. And this is our heart. We want to see the thriving, healthy leaders to rise up and boldly, uncompromisingly carry the gospel to the world.